This video is designed for owners of our GPS trackers. So you've purchased some trackers from us, and this video will show you how to use the administration portal. So we're going to log in via this URL here, which is track.trail.live/sign-in, and sign in with the credential that you've been sent. And this credential will work if you used to use it on our older system as well. So the credential has been carried through. So once you've signed in, you'll be presented with a very short menu at the top, and quite simply you have orders and events. It will default automatically, as you can see, to the events menu, and from within here you can set up your expeditions. Before we do that, I'm first of all just going to show you what the orders portal does. If you want to hire some additional trackers, perhaps to top up some that you already own, you would use this order portal area. And in order to place a new order, quite simply click on this button here, place new order. You can put in an event's name. Now when you do this, it will automatically create a brand new event for you, as well as placing the order, to save you a little bit of time. So you quite simply put the name of your event in there, choose your start date, start time, end date, end time. If you're an owner of our GPS trackers, then you have no need to click on this because you already have access to the Ordnance survey, so you can leave that unticked. Choose the type of trackers that you want, and we offer GSM LTE trackers, spot trackers, and also Garmin InReach. So choose the number that you want in there, and then select your delivery and return options. It will give you a cost. You can add a purchase order number if you want, and then you can place the order. And as soon as you place that order, it will appear in this list here. We will be notified, and you will receive those trackers a few days before your expedition. And as soon as you've created that order, as I've mentioned, straight away it will create an equivalent event. So let me go on to events now. So on the events page, this is where you would usually just set up expeditions or events for trackers that you already own. It's a very quick and simple process, and for the most part you can just select the default options. So there is a plus button over here to create a new event. Choose an event name. I'm just going to call this test 12345 12345. The start date I'm going to say is the 10th of December. I'm going to say it starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, and this time directly impacts what time the trackers will appear on the tracking map. So do ensure that you choose a time early enough, and because if you choose a time, let's say 10 o'clock in the morning, and your trackers actually start being used at 7 a.m, they won't show up on the map or collect any of the data on the tracking map. So do ensure that's always an earlier time than you will actually need. The end date, I'm going to say this one runs through to the 12th of December, and I'll just leave it at its default at 23:59. You can put a password in here if you want the tracking map to be password protected, so you can put the password of your choosing, and as long as you share that password with all the people who are going to be viewing the expedition or event, they will be able to access it. Most of these others you can just leave at default and quite simply create the event, but I will explain what each of them are for. So checkpoint detect radius. What this is for is if you've got checkpoints defined on your expedition, and they can have been by inclusion in a Gpx file, or perhaps they were a list of grid references which you've imported, then when the tracker gets within this radius, it will put a timestamp in the boards or leaderboards page of your tracking map, so you can see what time the tracker reached there. If in doubt, just leave this set to 250 meters, we suggest. Next of all, you've got which maps do you want to be available on the tracking map. So there's 4 overall types, and there's about 10 overall subtypes of map in general. So as default, all of the map types are selected, but if for some reason you didn't want Google Maps to be available, or you didn't want Ordnance survey mapping to be available, you can untick those boxes. This next one down is which map do you want it to default load when you open the page. So I would suggest you select Ordnance Survey or perhaps Map Box, whichever is most appropriate to your event or expedition type. They are our two most popular map types. Is the event a race? This is defaulted to no. And if you're unsure exactly what this does, please leave it set to no. Essentially, this enables some additional features which are only applicable to races, and that includes the update frequency of the trackers when approaching the finish lines and things like that. So it will force the trackers to a more frequent update when they approach the finish line. So unless you're in a race scenario, please ensure that is set to no. If you set that to yes in something like a Duke of Edinburgh expedition, then there is a chance it could flip the trackers to a far more frequent update frequency, and you could run the batteries down faster on your trackers. So unless you fully understand what this one does, and we can certainly give you more information about it, always leave that as its default selected to no. Next up, emergency SMS contacts. You can choose up to 3 mobile telephone numbers to put in here, and these will each receive an SMS in the event that one of the trackers on your expedition pushes or one of the people on your expedition pushes the SOS button on the trackers. Just type in the mobile number 07, whatever it may be. If you happen to have a mobile number from abroad, you would have to put the plus and country code prefix in there. If you're going to be sharing this URL for your expedition on social media, you can change the image here. Most of you, this isn't going to be applicable, but you can choose to change that there. And finally, create event. So just to recap, the only information you really need to put in is the name of the event, and whatever name you choose for this will be reflected in the URL. The start date and time, an end date and time, and if you want a password or not. Everything else is purely optional, and then click create event. As soon as you create event, it will be saved, and if you scroll a little bit further down, 2 further areas have now been shown. The first of those is routes and or checkpoints, and the second one is participants. So let's first of all deal with participants. You'll want to assign the trackers that you own to your expedition. As default, 0 are currently assigned. So let's go in here to assign the trackers to the event, and here you would type in the number of the tracker. Let's say you own tracker 1130, 1132, 1133. You would just type those in and tab between the fields. I'm going to put in trackers 101 and tab across to 102. Actually, this tracker has already been assigned to a different event on the same day. So that's a good example of where if you try and assign a tracker, it will give you an error message. So I'm going to pick a different tracker here. I'm going to pick 105, 106 and 107. So what you saw there was a fail-safe to stop you assigning trackers twice to the same event. So I've now assigned 3 trackers. If I click assign trackers there and scroll down here, it says there are 3 participants registered, and you can click on the little edit participants button here, and you can change the flag number which shows on the map next to the tracker, and you can also change the label for the group names. Now as default, they will be given group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, etc. In the order that you added them in, but you can change that. You can make these alpha, beta, or whatever you wish. You can also change the bib number or the flag number to be something else. You might want it to say 105, the same as your tracker, or you may just be happy with it saying group 1. You can also choose to associate a group, and if you add a group, this will allow you to show or hide individual trackers on the tracking map from the drop down in the participants bar. So for example, you perhaps could say male, male, female, and then from the drop down on the map, if you just selected the group male, only the male trackers would show, or only the female trackers. Likewise, you could just put the same information in here that is in there, i.e. 1, 2 and 3, and you will then get the ability to show and hide each and every individual tracker on the map at the same time. The route If you have got more than one route that your trackers are assigned to, let's say you've got 4 Duke of Edinburgh groups out or 3 Duke of Edinburgh groups out, then in here, if you'd assign more than one route as a GPX file, then you would get the option here to choose from different routes. So you could assign group 1, let's say, to the red route, group 2 to the blue route, group 3 to the yellow route. And they would follow that for the purposes of time and distance recording, and I'll show you a little bit more about that later. And that's all it's in here. As soon as you make any change, that data is automatically saved. This little icon here just indicates that it's been saved. So let me just change this for you just to show you. You'll see straight away that data is saved. So that's all done. I'm not going to make any further changes to that. And we've got our 3 participants registered. And at the moment, if I go back onto our events, I've called this event test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I click on this little link at the top, open it in a new tab. Here we go. This is just a blank default map, and there's no routes on there. And the 3 trackers, which are groups 1, 2, and 3, are there. And you can see tracker 105, 106, and 107. As it stands right now, there are no routes, there are no checkpoints or anything like that implemented on the map. I'm going to add one. So let's go back to the event tab, scroll down to the routes or checkpoints and click on the plus key. There are 2 types of file which are accepted now. The first one is the standard Gpx file, and the second one is a CSV. Let's deal with the CSV first of all. Let's say you don't use an electronic mapping system, but you do perhaps write down grid references, and then you can import those into the system and it will put the grid references on the page. So a CSV file stands for comma separated value. All that means is you need to create a file called the file name .csv. So let's say it's richard.csv. And within that set file, which is just a text file, the format would be what you want the first checkpoint to be called, then a comma, and then the actual fully qualified grid references. And do ensure you put the prefix, the 2-digit prefix on the front, so it knows which area of the country it's referring to. And then on the next line, you put checkpoint 2, comma grid reference, checkpoint 3, comma grid reference, etc., etc. And as soon as you click save, it would import that list of grid references in as checkpoints. Instead, I'm going to choose a GPX file. So the GPX file, if I click choose file and choose this, which is the White Horse 50, and then if I click save, you can see here that it's added a route called the White Horse 50. It's picked a default color of gray. It's detected that there are 6 checkpoints, and it gives you the ability to edit some details and delete it. First of all, I'm going to show you where that GPX file was created. So I'm just going to flip over into this other window. This is Ordnance Survey Maps Online, which is the standard tool for creating GPX files. If you may use this already, you may have an account for this already. You may use EDV, which is essentially a cut back version of this application. If you don't use any application at all, I can highly recommend this Ordnance Survey Maps Online. It is got more features and is more sophisticated than the EDV version, and it is very, very low cost to use. It's around about £25 per year, and for that you'll get full access to all the map types, including the OS Leisure stack, and you can also use it to create and plan your routes. So what I've done here, I've created a route. I've gone in and drawn this route on the page, and from time to time what I've also done is clicked on one of the points within here and labeled it checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, checkpoint 3, and those you can see here. So we've got a start point, a checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, checkpoint 3, 4, and the finish. So if I zoom back out, you should be able to see that the start and finish is here, and here are those other checkpoint locations there. Okay, so that's how I created it, and then it was saved within this application, and you can export it as a GPX file. And that's where this came into play. I then just clicked on add to add a new file, imported that GPX, and as we can see here, this is the route that's imported. I'm going to click on edit here so we can see what's in there. The name of the route, it's automatically detected as the White Horse 50 miles. I'm going to leave that as default, or in fact, let me just delete the word miles and leave it at the White Horse 50. We've now increase the number of colors that you can use on the map. Essentially, you can pick any color in the rainbow. So you can just choose this slider to pick any of the available areas and then pick a very specific color for the one you want. So I'm just going to pick bright red up in the top right corner here. And then I'm going to click on update. Okay, so that's now saved it as red. Let me just go back in there just to show you something else which is interesting. You'll note now that it has automatically detected all of those checkpoints which were in that file and added them into this list here. Not only has it added the long and latitude and the grid reference for them all, it has also calculated the distance as well. And this is important because it will give your trackers the ability to show the distance and speed and time that they are moving along your fixed route. What do I mean by that? Let's say you've got two groups all going on to follow this White Horse route around, and what happens is as your trackers start to move along the map, as they progress towards your checkpoints here, here and here, it will give, if you click on the tracking map, it will give an estimated time of arrival to each of those checkpoints, which is very handy for working out what time you need to deploy your supervisors or resources to the checkpoints. And also it'll tell you, of course, what time they will finish as well. It gives ETAs on the main tracking page up to 4 hours in advance, and up in the top right corner of the screen, I'll show you the tracking map in a minute. It will also give ETAs up to 8 hours in advance on the leaderboard area, so you can see well ahead. Anyway, let's step back into this here. So you will also be able to edit the names of these checkpoints if you wish, and you will be able to delete those as well. So let's step back onto this area here. And now if I click on this same map, in fact, if I just go and refresh the page on this here, what we should now find is, yes, there we go. It has loaded onto our tracking map the GPX file. It's colored it in red, as we can see. And if we click on that, it comes up with checkpoint 1, Broadhinton, 16 kilometers. Checkpoint 2, Churhill, 34.9 kilometers, etc., etc. So it's added those checkpoints on there. Now then, I mentioned usage of the tracking maps. Let's have a quick look at this area here. So first of all, you have got the name of the event. You've got the start date and start time and end date and end time. The trackers will only appear on the tracking map within this window. Here's your participants bar. You will see all of the trackers that are assigned along with the names that you gave them on here. You can search, if you have a particularly long list, you can search for them on there. From groups, you can choose to show or hide individual trackers or groups of trackers on the menu. Once the trackers have started tracking, this message will be replaced, and when you click on that, it will show the breadcrumb trail of the tracker where it's been that day, and it will also give you the capability to download that route, the recorded breadcrumb trail, as a GPX file or a KML file as well. And you will also see the ability to play back the tracker's progress. So at the bottom, a sliding bar will appear straight the way across, and as you drag the slider across, you will see the tracker, a little white dot that represents the tracker's position, will move along the route, and it will update the time, so you can see exactly where the tracker was at each date or time on the map. Okay, let's move across to this area, which is the map selector. So all of those map types are shown here, so I can change it to be Google Maps, and you can flip it over to be the Google Satellite View, of course. You can also choose it to be the Mapbox Outdoors. You can choose it to be Ordnance Survey Leisure Stack, which is the most common one you'd use, for example, on a Duke of Edinburgh. And as you scroll in, or zoom in, should I say, you'll see it rolls through the layers right the way through to the one in 25,000 scale, and you can zoom back out as well, right the way back out until you get the larger scale map. Also on here, you can show and hide the individual routes, the Gpx files that you've uploaded, or the lists of grid references that you may have uploaded. So if I click on this, it'll show and hide the route as well. Finally, up in the top right corner, I mentioned the board or the leaderboard table. It's often used in races, but can be useful for expeditions as well. If I click on this here, what you will see are the trackers which are assigned to this expedition, and you will also see that there is the names of the checkpoints, so checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, checkpoint 3, checkpoint 4, and the finish. As the trackers roam into the radius, which I mentioned earlier, that 1 in 250 meters, it will put a timestamp within each of these. And it will also put ETA predictions for the time that they will arrive at the future checkpoints in that box as well. So we can just step back to the map by clicking on this button or clicking on back to the event map. Okay, that concludes the demonstration of the mapping system. Let me just drop back into our test event area. So let me just drop back to the main menu for a quick recap. So here we are at the main menu. Once you've logged in, if you want to place an order to hire some extra trackers, use the orders area. But normally, as an owner, you will just be creating events. So from the events page, all you'll do to create a new event is click on plus here, put in the name of the event, the start date and time, save it, and of course, critically, remember to assign your trackers. And you can do this from here as well. So for any of the existing events that you've created, you can choose to edit that event, or you've got a direct link to be able to edit the participants from this button here as well, just as a shortcut. That is everything. We're constantly adding and updating new features on this, but we hope you enjoy using it. Of course, if you ever need any assistance, we're here to help. You can use the in-hours telephone number, which you'll find on the back of the tracker during normal office hours. Then there's also an out-of-hours mobile telephone number printed on the back of the trackers as well. And you can call us for support whilst you're on expeditions or at weekends. Thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to assisting you with your tracking events this year.